Let me ask you something. Have you ever watched another guy do almost nothing, yet somehow every woman treats him with a level of respect, consistency, and loyalty you've never received, even when you were doing everything right? It feels personal, but it isn't. It's psychological. There are men women instinctively respect before attraction even enters the picture. And if you're not one of those men, you're already climbing uphill. That's why you feel like you're always compensating, always proving your worth, always putting in effort for results that other men seem to get without lifting a finger. But here's the part most men never realize. There are three specific types of men women respect instantly. Three patterns that flip the entire dynamic so she adjusts to you, not the other way around. And once you understand what these men have in common, everything about the way women respond to you begins to change. But before we get into those three types, you need to understand why women react this way in the first place. A woman doesn't respect a man because he tries harder than everyone else. She respects him because something in the way he carries himself signals that he won't collapse if she leans on him. Before she feels desire, before she feels warmth, before her heart even considers opening, her mind runs a quiet calculation. Is this a man whose inner world is strong enough to stand on its own? That question is answered long before romance ever starts. Respect is the gatekeeper. Attraction walks through afterward. To really understand this, you have to look at how women move through emotional spaces. A woman only exposes her softer side when she senses a man's boundaries are real, not flexible guidelines he abandons the second he fears losing her. She needs to feel that he isn't shaped by her moods, that he won't distort himself for approval, and that he doesn't rely on her reactions to determine his identity. Respect becomes the stabilizing force that tells her she can be vulnerable without triggering chaos in return. When a woman senses steadiness in you, she relaxes. When she senses weakness, she tests you. And this isn't about manipulation, it's about survival. Respect decides where she places you in her mental hierarchy. Women subconsciously sort men into categories. Who is grounded? Who is dangerous? Who is irrelevant? Who is admirable? This classification happens beneath awareness. It's not cruelty, it's instinct. A man who knows who he is, who stands firm without aggression or insecurity, rises automatically. A man without structure falls instantly, no matter how kind or well-intentioned he is. Think about the classic nice guy archetype. He listens, he accommodates, he gives without limit. He tries to earn affection by effort alone. Yet, he's the man women either lose interest in or slowly walk over. It's not because he's a good person. It's because he provides nothing solid for her to trust. She can't lean on him emotionally because there's nothing to lean on. Respect doesn't disappear all at once. It dissolves softly, quietly, through tiny moments he doesn't even notice. And those small moments matter more than anything else. Most men don't lose respect because of one dramatic mistake. They lose it in the subtle, forgettable interactions that slip under their awareness. Women don't rely on big events to understand what kind of man you are. They read the micro expressions, the shifts in tone, the way you respond when something doesn't go your way. Those details tell her everything. This is why her earliest tests don't look like tests. They show up as minor inconveniences, a last-minute cancellation just to see how you react, a lukewarm reply to observe if you start explaining yourself, a mention of a guy who complimented her, not because she cares, but because she wants to see what happens to your composure. None of these moments are designed to hurt you. In psychology, they're micro-assessments. She's evaluating your emotional leadership, checking whether you stay centered or lose your frame. If you crumble over something small, she knows you'll collapse under real pressure. Every woman instinctively evaluates whether you can stay grounded when emotions intensify, hers and yours. But many men misunderstand these moments entirely. They think being patient means accepting anything. They think being supportive means tolerating disrespect. They think staying calm means disguising insecurity. And every time they respond from fear instead of stability, her respect slips a little further. A woman doesn't lose respect because you're gentle or understanding. She loses respect when she realizes your self-worth depends on her approval. When a man reacts to pressure with anxiety, overcaring, or endless reassurance, She senses it immediately. His energy tightens. His tone softens where it should be firm. His behavior becomes shaped by fear instead of choice. And from that moment forward, she knows she can push further, because he's already shown he'll fold. This is the psychological entry point to everything that comes next, because when these subtle tests appear, one type of man stands out instantly: the man who never trades his dignity for connection. And that brings us to the first type of man women respect without hesitation: the man who never negotiates his self-respect. A woman recognizes a man's value long before she admits she's drawn to him. She pays attention to the way he responds when something challenges him, whether he maintains his integrity in uncomfortable moments, and whether he abandons himself the moment he fears losing her. Respect isn't given because you're loyal, generous, patient, or emotionally open. It's given because you refuse to compromise who you are when the pressure rises. It's the steadiness in your choices, the firmness in your boundaries, and the quiet confidence that no situation, not even her, can make you betray yourself. A woman can sense instantly when a man is anchored in principle versus when he's making every move from fear. One creates certainty, the other creates collapse, and the men who collapse are always the ones who hand their dignity away piece by piece, hoping the sacrifice will buy them closeness. These are the men who fold the moment things get uncomfortable. They bend their standards just to avoid tension. They swallow disrespect to prevent conflict. They cling to the hope that endless patience will somehow convert into affection. But it never does. The quickest way a man destroys his own value is by showing that he's willing to shrink himself just to remain in a woman's orbit. The moment he begins accepting behaviors he'd never tolerate from anyone else, being left waiting without explanation, receiving lukewarm apologies for disappearing, being treated warmly one day and coldly the next, he sends a message louder than anything he says out loud. He's teaching her the rules of engagement, not because she wants to mistreat him, but because he's revealed through his responses that there are no real boundaries she has to respect. Once she sees that stepping over the line brings no consequence, something shifts quietly and permanently. Respect doesn't evaporate in an explosion. It fades in silence. It slips away in the small moments he thinks don't matter. Picture this. She cancels plans an hour before meeting, offering a soft excuse that doesn't quite make sense. Instead of slowing down, instead of letting the moment reveal something about her reliability, he jumps to reassure her. He gives her a pass immediately, tries to reschedule instantly, and masks disappointment with enthusiasm. He believes he's proving he's understanding. She sees a man already bargaining with his self-worth, and without saying a word, she lowers his standing in her mind. She might still enjoy his company, she might still keep him around, but she no longer views him with the kind of respect that fuels attraction, loyalty, or emotional safety. A man rooted in self-respect responds differently. He doesn't raise his voice, he doesn't guilt trip, he doesn't retaliate. He simply makes decisions that reflect his value. When someone crosses a line, he steps back. When someone becomes inconsistent, he creates space. When someone treats him casually or carelessly, he withdraws access, not to punish, but because he refuses to participate in dynamics that undermine who he is. He doesn't beg for better treatment. He doesn't recite his boundaries like a speech. He doesn't try to convince anyone to act right. He protects his peace so firmly that people around him either rise to meet that standard or fall away. And that's why this type of man becomes undeniable. Women don't respect him because he demands it. They respect him because his internal framework is unmistakable. He has structure without rigidity. He has clarity without aggression. He has consequences without anger. And the most powerful part is that he's not afraid to let someone walk if they're playing with his worth. That alone places him in a category entirely separate from the man who tries to hold everything together with explanations and promises. A man who enforces his boundaries never loses respect, even if the relationship ends. And that's what sets him apart. He doesn't chase stability. He establishes it. But there's another layer that shapes how a woman sees a man almost instantly, a deeper instinct that operates beneath awareness. It's the sense that he isn't limited to her, that his world doesn't start and end with her attention. This brings us to the second type of man women respect without hesitation, the man who moves like someone with real options. Women feel this energy in seconds. A man with genuine options isn't scrambling, doubting himself, or obsessing over one particular outcome. He isn't measuring his value through the reaction of a single woman. His confidence isn't rehearsed, it's earned. He has built it through discipline, growth, self-improvement, and the kind of life that keeps moving whether a romance succeeds or falls apart. That's what makes him powerful. He knows he can rebuild. He knows he can reconnect. He knows he can re-enter the world and be chosen again, not through arrogance, but through experience. And because of that, his presence feels different. His pace is slower. His tone is calmer. He doesn't chase. He doesn't cling. He doesn't spiral when she pulls away or becomes distant. One person's inconsistency doesn't destabilize him because his life contains momentum outside the relationship. He isn't emotionally monopolized by her attention. With that one difference, she sees him as someone she cannot easily influence or control. That's what activates a psychological response known as competition anxiety, a natural mechanism where a woman's perception of a man's desirability increases when she sees evidence that others notice him too. When she senses that he is someone people gravitate toward, someone other women find intriguing or attractive, her behavior shifts, not because she's insecure, but because she knows that a man with options won't stay where he's minimized. Many men think options means juggling multiple partners or chasing attention. That's not power, that's distraction. Real options come from internal worth, emotional composure, financial grounding, physical discipline, meaningful relationships, and the ability to stand alone without falling apart. When a man invests in himself deeply enough, he becomes someone people naturally pay attention to. That attention isn't forced, it's magnetism. And when a woman sees that magnetism in a man she's dating, her energy adjusts almost instantly. Imagine you post a photo where you look sharp, calm, and confident. Another woman comments, "You look good." It's simple, it's public, it's harmless. Yet the moment your partner sees it, something inside her becomes more alert. She becomes more engaged, more intentional, more present. Not because she fears competition, but because she's reminded that your value isn't something she owns. It's something you carry, and that realization changes everything. Women respect men they cannot contain, men whose identity stretches far beyond romance, men who move through the world with purpose, direction, and depth that no single connection can limit or define. A man like that isn't preoccupied with chasing reassurance, clinging to attention, or smoothing over every emotional ripple. His center of gravity doesn't live in her mood or her approval, it lives inside himself. And that's why women respect him. Control means nothing to him because he can't be controlled. He's not swayed by silence. He's not shaken by distance. He doesn't spiral from uncertainty. His emotional footing is his own. But even this kind of man, even the one who carries real options and genuine self-worth, loses everything if his emotions can be rattled by hers. Because the moment she realizes she can shake your center, everything shifts. This brings us to the third kind of man women respect instantly, the emotionally untouchable man. A woman can admire your drive, enjoy your warmth, and appreciate your company. But true respect only settles in when she understands her emotional storms cannot destabilize your internal weather. Emotional steadiness is one of the strongest expressions of masculine strength, and women read a man's emotional baseline with stunning precision. They watch how fast he reacts, how deeply he spirals, how easily his mood bends because of a tone she used, a reply she delayed, or a comment she made. The moment she sees her emotions can throw you off balance, respect begins to crack quietly beneath the surface. Women don't test emotional stability to create drama. They test it to understand if you can carry the weight of a relationship. When a woman becomes open with a man, her emotions don't follow predictable patterns. They surge, shift, collide, soften, and rise again. She needs to know the man beside her won't lose himself when her internal world gets loud. And so, without consciously planning it, she tests. A slight pullback to see if you chase, a delayed response to gauge your impulse, a casual mention of another man's compliment just to observe whether your composure holds. These small, seemingly ordinary moments reveal more about a man's emotional leadership than any deep conversation ever could. Most men fail these tests for one simple reason. They let fear take the wheel. Fear of being replaced, of being forgotten, of not being enough. And fear makes them react in ways that instantly diminish their presence. They grow jealous at insignificant things. They overanalyze silence. They lash out when they feel unsure. They ask for reassurance the moment she withdraws. Every one of those reactions communicates the same truth. This man cannot hold his own emotional center. If she becomes the anchor of his stability, then he is not strong enough to anchor hers. Think about a simple example. She casually mentions, "Some guy flirted with me today." A man without emotional grounding hears threat. He tightens, questions her, gets defensive, or subtly changes his tone. She didn't say it to hurt him. She said it to see whether he could stay steady. The emotionally untouchable man responds differently. He acknowledges it with calm, relaxed energy. He doesn't suppress emotion, but he doesn't let it overtake him either. His confidence remains intact. His frame holds effortlessly. To her, this is unmistakable. His steadiness creates a psychological imprint. She can express herself, her highs, her lows, her insecurities, her fire, without knocking him off course. That's where respect grows deepest. She feels safer because she sees she cannot move him with emotional turbulence. Not because he's cold or disconnected, but because he's anchored, guided, not dominated, supported, not controlled. This is emotional leadership, and women respond to it instinctively. Emotional mastery is not performative. It isn't pretending not to care, and it isn't shutting down. It's the quiet, disciplined choice to remain centered even when someone attempts to drag you into chaos. It's refusing to argue with every impulsive emotion. It's declining to hand your mood to someone else. When she tests, you remain connected. When she creates space, you maintain your direction. When she pushes for a reaction, you respond with clarity instead of confusion. This doesn't make you distant. It makes you reliable. The moment she realizes she can shake your emotional ground, she stops respecting you. But when she discovers she can't, when she sees your stability isn't situational but structural, everything about her behavior transforms. She begins to recognize you as someone she can truly lean on, someone who can handle pressure without cracking, someone whose presence strengthens her rather than mirroring her instability. And when that realization sinks in, you stop being just another possibility. You become the standard. Because when a man carries all three layers, self-respect that cannot be bargained, options that cannot be contained, and emotional steadiness that cannot be rattled, women instinctively adjust themselves around him. They feel something different in his presence, something rare, something grounding. They don't need explanations to understand it. They sense it like gravity. The first shift happens in her voice. It softens, not in submission, but in recognition. She's speaking to a man who isn't moved by fear or insecurity, and that changes the energy of every conversation. Conflict becomes smoother. Vulnerability becomes easier. Her words become more deliberate because she now understands the weight her actions carry around a man she respects. Then her effort grows. She initiates more. She invests more. She becomes more intentional, more present, more consistent, not because she's trying to keep you, but because she feels elevated in your presence. And that elevation makes her protect the connection rather than test its limits. She tests less, not because she's lost interest, but because she's found certainty. She sees you live by principle, not pressure. And when a woman sees that, the dynamic doesn't just change, it stabilizes. When she sees you enforce your boundaries without turning them into threats, maintain your options without parading them for attention, and regulate your emotions without numbing yourself, her instinct to push for reactions begins to fade. She no longer needs to test the strength of your presence because your consistency answers the questions she never had to ask out loud. Respect starts to reveal itself not through grand gestures, but through the smallest adjustments in her behavior. She keeps her promises with more intention. She communicates with more clarity. She takes responsibility for her missteps instead of hiding behind excuses or emotional fog. Her respect isn't born from fear or pressure, it comes from admiration, the natural response to a man who governs himself with integrity. Picture that dynamic in motion. You enter the relationship grounded, steady, and aligned with your standards rather than her moment-to-moment reactions. She feels your frame long before you ever describe it. When her emotions surge, you stay centered. When she pulls away, you don't chase. You remain directed. When another woman acknowledges your presence, you don't flinch or perform. You simply exist in your natural confidence, and she sees all of it. She observes the pattern, connects the dots, and adjusts in a way that feels almost effortless. Her respect grows not because you demanded it, but because your way of living makes disrespect incompatible. This isn't a strategy or a trick, it's the psychological reality of a man who knows who he is and what he refuses to tolerate. Respect is not a discussion. It's not something you negotiate or request. It's something you embody. It's something you command through behavior, discipline, and internal structure. And when you look at the three types of men women instantly respect, the pattern becomes undeniable. It isn't about how handsome you are, how charming you seem, or how hard you try. It's about the architecture within you, the boundaries that don't crumble, the life rich enough to create real options, and the emotional steadiness that cannot be shaken by anyone's storm. These qualities don't just change the way women perceive you, they transform the way you move through every relationship and every decision. A man who protects his boundaries becomes someone she cannot dismiss. A man with options becomes someone she cannot take lightly. And a man whose emotions remain grounded becomes someone she cannot manipulate, derail, or destabilize. When these traits merge, they form a presence that shifts the atmosphere the moment you walk into it. Women sense it the same way they sense confidence or certainty, immediately, instinctively, unmistakably. They don't debate it, they respond to it. And suddenly, everything becomes calmer. Conversations gain clarity. The constant tension you used to feel, the mental noise of wondering whether she's pulling away, whether she's testing you, whether you're doing enough, begins to dissolve. You stop chasing reassurance because you're no longer fueled by fear. You stop overthinking because you trust yourself again. And from that self-trust, you begin leading with presence instead of pressure. You'll see the shift in her trust as well. She confides in you more, not because you entertain her emotions, but because she sees that you won't collapse under them. She brings fewer problems rooted in insecurity and more vulnerability rooted in safety. The drama that once consumed your energy begins to fade, not because she changed overnight, but because you stopped feeding the cycles that created chaos. A man who is not respected will always feel unseen, unheard, and unvalued. But a man who commands respect through the strength of his actions becomes a man a woman shows devotion to. When she respects you, she loves with depth. She stays with intention. She shows up with consistency. Respect is the doorway to love, and if you don't step through it, nothing that follows can stand.